Good morning and welcome to another edition of Our Town here on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. My name is Darren Swenson. Our Town, as always, brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust. A little bit later on in the show, we will talk to Decorah School Superintendent Tim Cronin. We'll also talk to Waukon City Manager Gary Boden, but we're going to start our show this morning with Luther College softball pitcher Kendra Cooper. She's a fifth-year senior out of Lansing Kee, and we'll talk about the season that Kendra has had to this point and a very good message regarding the health and well-being of student athletes as they practice their craft and just getting back to the joy of playing the games that you love as well. So that's going to be our first guest. That comes up right now. Kendra Cooper will kick off the show next. This is Our Town. It's brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust, and you're listening to it on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. She's been a super senior in many ways for the Luther College North softball team, and she's helped her team get back to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 5 years. Kendra Cooper, the senior out of Kee High, joining us to preview the tournament. And Kendra, you decided to take your COVID fifth year this year. What went into that decision? And obviously it's worked out, at least on the field, pretty darn well.
Yeah. I had not really thought about it much last year during the season, and then got done with the conference tournament and kind of just looked back on my last 4 years and wasn't really satisfied with not really my play, but like more of my view on the game and everything, and just wanted to get back to where I was and having joy playing again. So I decided to put a lot of work in mentally and physically, and in hopes that I could get back out on the field enjoying it just as much as I used to. So, and that's where I'm at. So it's awesome.
And you mentioned that took a lot of mental and physical effort. How do you go about approaching that? Because we can talk about it takes mental and physical effort, but from the outside looking in, we don't understand what you go through to get to that point. What all went into that?
Yeah, it took a lot. I ended up seeing a sports psychologist, started that in August, and I've seen him ever since. Every like couple of weeks I see him, and he's kind of been the best thing for me, just kind of making me realize that there's more to just being a softball player, and I don't have to put all the pressure on myself, and just kind of helped me find the love of the game again, just enjoying my teammates and playing the game.
And you mentioned the joy that you get from coming just to the ballpark every day and playing softball. My industry does a lousy job. We look at what your statistics are and what your team accomplishments, and we correlate that with joy, but there's a lot deeper to that than that. How would you explain the love that you've regained for this game?
Yeah, I think a lot of people do look at the statistics and whether we do make postseason and all that stuff, but really at the end of the day, that's not really what matters. You're not going to remember what games you won or lost and all that. You're just going to remember the times with your teams, the bus rides and the dugout and everything like that. And I think this team has just really helped me also find the joy for this game again. They're incredible. They're so much fun to be around. So to get to postseason and to get to play for another week with this team is just kind of the best part. It's fun to win. Everybody loves to win. But again, I just think it's just all about having fun with these girls. So.
And what has made this a special group, and how has that helped you become a successful group on the field?
Yeah, I think we have worked really, really hard to just create a family atmosphere, and we have worked hard to get to know each other on a much more deeper level. And there's also just a great connection between the coaches and the players, and we just know we have each other's backs, and we're just a family. So I just think that's really helped us get to where we are today.
As far as your play on the field, your statistics throughout your career have been pretty darn good. You surpassed the 500 strikeout total last weekend in the victory against Central, but you've taken your game to another level this year. What do you credit that to, other than what you just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a big part of my success is the mental part. I think in the past I have let just one hit or one run scored off of me just kind of break me down. And now it's just like I don't let that get to me. And I know that my teammates have my back, and I trust in them. I trust in my coaches, and I trust in my training. And I just go out there and try to have fun and do what I can for the team to get a win.
You look back at your career as a whole, what have you learned about yourself by being a collegiate student athlete that will help you as you go into the next phase of life, which hopefully is about 3-4 weeks from now?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say I've learned a lot about myself. Just kind of really growing into the person that I am. And I know that I want to be around sports. That's the big thing that I've learned about myself, and hopes to be a strength and conditioning coach in the near future. And so, yeah, I think it's just helped me learn more about like what an athlete needs and wants from coaches. And hopefully my experience helps me better myself as a future coach.
And again, focusing on the field end of things, the last time Luther was in an NCAA tournament, you were sitting in the stands watching your sister down in Oklahoma City. Do some of those memories, did that kind of help you motivate to help get this program back to, frankly, where it belongs?
Yeah, for sure. I remember going to Oklahoma City and sitting watching Cronin play, and I wanted nothing more than to be out there with her. So I remember being recruited to and going to regional tournaments and just like dreaming of those moments. So it's definitely been a goal of mine to get to postseason, and 5 years later, finally getting here, it's pretty awesome. And yeah, it's been a great journey.
And you've touched on this a little bit, but as cool as getting to the postseason, as cool as all the success that you've had on the field, is it that you've had this year? Is it that much cooler just to get to spend another week with this group of individuals? Is that kind of primary and maybe the main thing at this time of year?
Yes, of course. I think I said that to my dad the other day. I was just like, I'm excited to go play softball with these girls, but I'm just so excited to get to spend another week with them. I can't get enough of them, and I'm not ready to be done with them. So that's kind of the best part, is just to get to go to practice with them today and yesterday and tomorrow, and just to get to spend more time with them.
Of course, the selection show was Monday. You weren't the automatic qualifier. You probably felt pretty good about getting in, but you never know for sure. How good did it feel seeing Luther come up on the screen on Monday?
Yeah, it was really cool. We actually, I've never done a selection show, so we had a lot of questions on like how it worked and everything, but it was pretty fun to be there with my teammates and get to see our name pop up and get to celebrate with them. It was really, really fun.
Going back to your high school career and into your collegiate career, let's say there's a kid like you, maybe thinking about wanting to play college sports. What advice would you give a young person like that?
I think going back, I think just trying to put in perspective that the high school game is a lot different than the college game. I think I came in with success in high school, and then coming into college, it's like kind of a wake up call. And if you put in the work and don't give up, I think you can get to the point that you are finding the same success that you were in high school. But I think just not settling for where you're at, but putting in the work to be successful at this level too.
And what do you learn about yourself, and how do you grow through that process that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I think you learn a lot from your failures. I think coming in, freshman year, I didn't do what I wanted to do, but you learn most from your failures, and I had to accept that I wasn't this great pitcher anymore. Like I was pretty average, and so I just had to put the work in, and it's kind of what I did year in and year out, and in the off season, and so you learn a lot about yourself, I think, most from the failures. So yeah.
And we've talked about softball enough, but obviously you will go on to the next step in your life here in a few weeks. You touched on it a little bit, but what's next for Kendra Cooper?
This summer I'm going to be coaching Kee High softball again with Liz. They're practicing right now already, but I haven't been able to go, obviously. But I'm so excited to get back with that team and just bring my knowledge of the game and love of the game to them. And then after that, I'm hoping just to find a coaching job somewhere. I'm not really sure yet where, but just kind of keeping my eyes open for that.
And I know you've been able to stay connected to the Kee High softball program, obviously something very close to you. How special has that connection been, even as a college student athlete?
Yeah, Kee High made a huge impact on my life, obviously, and that program, and always have a special place in my heart. So being able to give back to them and that community is just means so much to me. And I love coaching those girls. They're super fun to be around, and just trying to give them what I have and what I've learned over the years is all I can ask for. So,
well, Kendra, congratulations on a great season off the on and off the field as you move on to the next step, hopefully here in a few weeks. I know you'll give back to the game that you love so much, and I know you'll make a difference in a lot of young people's lives when kids like you get into coaching. Congrats on a great season. Best of luck to you here in the NCAA tournament.
Thank you very much.
Kendra Cooper, Luther College pitcher, as the Norse get ready for the Oshkosh Regional this weekend. Time now for our conversation with the city manager of Waukon, Gary Boden, talking about all things going on in the city of Waukon. And we talk a lot about numbers during a lot of these conversations. You guys had it this week. Virtually every government entity out there has budget amendments for the current year about this time of year. And I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to explain to some or to ask somebody in your position why that is the case this time of year. Explain why you guys and virtually every government entity has that this time of year.
Well, one of the things is to effectively close out the fiscal year that we're in. Obviously, the fiscal year ends in June 30th. And there will be places where there will be surplus funds that need to be transferred, or funds that need to go from one area of accounting to another so that everything balances out. Our overall balance, and most governments for that matter, the overall balances are the same, but sometimes during the year you shift monies from some accounts to others just to reflect what actually has happened as opposed to what was anticipated through a budget estimate.
Obviously, you have to fill a mayor vacancy in the city of Waukon. What's going to be the process to fill that spot?
We're advertising in the newspaper right now. It's actually our utility billing clerk. She's retiring after, I think, 34 years of service to the city. So we have somebody that's going to be coming in. She's going to retire in July, so we want to have somebody on board by that time.
And replacing, filling that mayor vacancy, is that a pretty standard procedure? Is it pretty cut and dried on how you go about doing that?
Yeah, it's established by state statute. And in fact, we have to make an appointment. We, the city council, actually has to make an appointment to replace that vacancy right now, actually in 60 days from the statement of resignation. Otherwise, if that doesn't happen, then there has to be an election to just fill out that term. And then on top of that, if a few electors, I think it's 10, do not want to have the appointment in place, then they can call for a special election likewise. It's really awkward given the fact that Mayor Stone resigned in May and his term is up at the end of this calendar year. So realistically, whoever is going to be appointed, if an appointment is made, and I assume it will be, that appointment will only be for 6 months.
I know his term was up at the end of this year anyway. If he had maybe 2 or 3 years left on the term, would the vacancy or the appointment be until the next general election? I know I'm probably asking something that really doesn't matter because his term was up anyway. Would the appointment last until the next general election? How does that process work?
I think it doesn't, but understand that in the context of our mayoralship, we only have 2-year terms. So the next general election that would fulfill it would be when that term is up anyway.
I understand you've scheduled a town hall meeting regarding housing for July. Review the process the city is going through in studying this very important issue.
Well, among other things, it's not just the city, it's also Alameda County Economic Development and Tourism is co-sponsoring this. We have been working on having site development, shovel-ready sites, but really the concern here is to have people have a clearer understanding about the grant possibilities from the state level, as well as having an understanding about what the economic circumstances are for housing development these days. There is no question that there is a challenge right now as far as interest rates are concerned. You know, if we're looking at housing development at 6 or 7% interest rates, that is quite a difference than what it was just a year ago. Although if you look at it in the broader historic context, a 6 or 7% interest rate is common, certainly be common in my lifetime. But for the last 8 years or so, we got used to 2.5% money, which, while I know it's probably a shock when you see the increase to 6 or 7%, the fact of the matter is that the 2.5% was probably abnormally low over a broader period of time.
When you discuss potential grant opportunities related to this issue at the state level, how competitive do you expect those grants to be? Because housing is an issue that many communities, many counties are dealing with right now.
I think it's not just an issue in Northeast Iowa, it's an issue all over Iowa and probably an issue throughout most of the country. One of the things that I think, as far as the competitive nature is concerned, is the grant requirements themselves. We have a grant system, if you will, that's now been predicated on a lower interest rate to begin with. We don't know whether, in fact, drawing attention to those issues may very well give the state some more incentive to try and loosen up the grantability of these things. A year ago, we were looking at apartment units that could be rented out for probably about $900 or $1,000 for a 2-bedroom through the workforce development grant process. Now it's about $1,200, maybe even more, because the interest rates have changed. And the fact of the matter is that while wages have increased every place else, what used to be affordable at $900 or $1,000, which is about a $40,000-$45,000 per unit income, that number's gone higher now, and we don't know what to do. And it's not just us, it's everybody. There will be people from representing different state agencies, not necessarily public state agencies, but we are inviting people from the state likewise to attend this meeting. We think that the town hall meeting actually would shed light on this issue on a much broader scale than just what's happening in Waukon or Alameda County.
I know oftentimes government entities bring up the term affordable housing, and the term affordable can be a subjective term. Is there a technical definition for affordable when you're talking about this specific issue?
Not really, although there are market analysis that does come up with those kinds of definitions, because every market is different. If you talk about affordable housing in a market where wages are higher, then in fact, we're talking about higher rents, but then you might have higher costs of living. Although, to be honest with you, I don't think that we have dramatically different costs of living. We have a higher amount of wage costs or wage positioning in urban areas versus rural areas. And I think that that's part of the challenge too, as well as the fact that it costs a little more to construct in rural areas because of the remoteness and accessibility to labor and to the accessibility to materials. And we've gone through a whole lot of issues in the post-COVID or even the COVID era, as far as material prices going up and down, and as well as far as just the value of housing to begin with, as evidenced by the fact that prices in our assessment in Alameda County went up on an average of 34%. That indicates what the market is like. It also indicates the cost of what it takes to build a house. Just as a classic example, my insurance costs for my house went up more than about $120,000 just because what it would take to replace my house. And I think that that's an indicator in of itself as to the challenges that we have in developing housing.
But how important is it for that insurance market to adjust a little bit? I remember in the Parkersburg tornado way back when, that was part of the issue they had. The home was insured for the value instead of the replacement value, and a lot of people couldn't afford to make that adjustment. How important is it that that market catches up in case something happens to your home?
Well, I think a lot of that is happening these days. And I think that's because of the concern of replacement value. I mean, if you start looking at materials of houses and the way that they're constructed, the fact is that the insurance markets reflect those costs. I don't think you're going to see as much shock, if you will, because I think the insurance companies are now more sensitive to replacement values. But that's just one aspect. I mean, that's an indicator, if anything. We're in the drift list, this most recent drift list, there's a discussion about an alternative dwelling unit that is made out of containers, and all of a sudden we're seeing product that is coming online that is not what would be considered traditional. And the real question is whether that's acceptable or not. Zoning codes have to catch up with some of that stuff if in fact a community wants to encourage that kind of housing. But the fact of the matter is that how a stick-built house is made these days is becoming very costly, and as a result, I don't know whether it's new types of construction, whether it's a different approach on financing through the grant process, or a combination of that and other things. The city, for instance, in our case, we're effectively donating shovel-ready land for apartment development as well as duplex development. We're trying to buy down the cost of a dwelling unit on the side of what is not related to the actual construction. About 41% of a single-family house has got nothing to do with the construction. It has to do with the land, the infrastructure that services that product or that home, as well as permit fees if you have that, and all kinds of other carrying costs that the developer may have. So we're trying at our end to try and modify that issue, but there still is a significant amount of pressure based upon the actual construction and the carrying costs that a developer has to have prior to the actual leasing or selling of a unit.
One of the issues you talked about on Monday night was the impact of state property tax reform. I know we have had this conversation before, but now that the legislature is done and all the bills have been passed, at least for this year, how can we move this conversation forward on what type of impact it's going to have on the fiscal year 2024 budget and beyond?
Well, we're going to see a modest increase. We probably will see a modest increase comparable to what we've done in the past. We have the ability to see a 3% growth on our general fund tax levies as opposed to trying to deal with the rate. Now the rate is not the issue. The issue is the assessed valuation. We had a 34% increase in Alameda County. Obviously, our taxes are not going to go up 34%. No one ever anticipated that to happen. But the fact is that the state has stepped in and said, you're not going to see a 34% increase in your levy. You have a limit of 3%. That 3% is going to yield us about $32,000. Every percentage point increase as far as the money that goes into our general fund is about $10,000. That actually is rather limiting. But, you know, we'll have to work within that limit. I think one of the things that we acknowledge here is that the reason for this to happen, and recognize it was significant bipartisan support to do this, is that the formulas that we have that put some controls on property aren't working. That's why they changed the law. And I can understand that clearly. And this law has a sunset in 2028. So they'll see what happens between now and then. But there have been some things that have been in place for 35 years. And I noted at the council meeting that there was one House of Representatives member that voted against it. All 50 senators and 90, and its oversight is in her mind convoluted, and I would agree. We have a very complicated property tax process in this state, and I've worked in 2 other states, and Iowa does it differently, and it's creating more bureaucratic problems as far as dealing with this new law. Fortunately, it doesn't have to come out of the city. The county auditors, the people who issue notices, are going to have a whole lot of more work conveying information to the citizens. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but the fact of the matter is that this is going to create a lot more work for people in the county's offices.
So in the big picture, it was okay to look at this issue and change it in your mind. It just maybe should have been changed in perhaps a simpler way than what the legislature did. Excuse me if I'm putting words in your mouth.
Well, Darren, I think the thing to understand here is that if anybody was going to start looking at this thing, you need to sit down and comprehensively go over this thing, as opposed to try and piecemeal it during a funnel session of the state's budget making process. Now, maybe there's motivation to do that, although to be honest with you, even if you have such unity amongst the people in the state's government, I mean, obviously it's dominated by Republicans, but there's a lot of differentiations between those Republicans. I mean, there was a discussion at one point that we would try to look at local option sales tax as kind of a mollifier of all of this. And there was a whole lot of pushback from city governments and counties and the like, saying, don't mess with local option sales tax, because that is actually a revenue source that we count upon, and as do, I think, most cities, for capital improvement and capital development and capital equipment. And that is an integral part to our budget making process. And I don't know, I've talked with a few legislators, and a lot of them at the House level thought that there wasn't enough sensitivity amongst the legislators to address the issues of local government financing. 61% of all of those elected officials have never held a local public office. And I think that that's probably some of the issue here is that there's a different language, a different jargon between legislators and local government officials that do this work on a day-by-day basis.
Anything we're missing? Anything else you want to pass on to the public, as long as you got the forum this morning?
Well, we got construction season starting. We're going to have a pre-con meeting for the 4th Street project next week, and that'll get underway. Probably later in the year, we'll also see construction work on the 1st Avenue and 1st Street Northwest sewer project. That won't happen until later in the summer, early fall. Those are the two big projects that are not related to the Platson subdivision. That subdivision is looking to open up at least one phase of it, probably in the next 6 weeks or so. Trying to get the streetway through the project so that we can have access to the new Dollar Tree Family Dollar store. That will, it looks like it'll open at midsummer probably. Maybe as early as around the 4th of July. But those things are happening. I mean, the work is going on. We keep doing stuff. We got a lot of things going on, and actually there's nothing new. It's just that we're just doing what we've been tasked to do here over the past year or so.
Gary, we appreciate your time and your information as always. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome, Darren. Have a good day.
Gary Boden, City Manager of Waukon. Having our monthly conversation with Decorah School Superintendent Tim Cronin. And Tim, I got to get something out of the way first. Going back to our last conversation in March, I believe I made the statement that I didn't believe you would have any snow days beyond that point. Yeah. Obviously, I jinxed you, so I'll apologize to you, and I'll take the thank yous from any students in the district. Let's get that out of the way first.
Yeah, I think that the thank yous would probably be coming from the seniors that would have a snow day that they wouldn't have to make up. I hope you're aware that the non-thank yous might come from the students and staff that now have a final day of June 2nd, Friday, June 2nd. So that might not be a day you want to drive around and own that jinx as much as you are today.
All right. I just wanted to get that out of the way first before we move forward. Since,
yeah, I appreciate that.
It's been kind of an interesting year on that end of things. At your meeting a little over a week ago, you got done with the budget for 2023, 2024. How was that process perhaps maybe a little different this year than years past?
Building budgets it's in my 10 years of being a superintendent, that has really been automated and improved greatly. Lots of stuff is set by the state, or there's a fixed amount that we're allowed to levy for as a district. So building a budget, and it's more what we approve. We approved the budget, but we approved levies, and which ultimately feeds into the tax rate. There's not as much flexibility in that process as one might think. Certainly here, what was interesting, we're getting to the end of our debt service payments, which is basically our mortgage payments for our high school. And the payments were designed to tear down the last 2 years. And I'd love to say, well, I've never seen that before, but I've only been in 2 other districts. So maybe that's a common thing. Usually the last year payment is kind of the one that tears down, but we tear down in 2 different years. We kind of offset that by funding our management levy, which was a little bit, we wanted to make sure that money had funds in it, which we can either use. Management fund is used for insurance and not health insurance, but district insurance and contracts. So there's that having a little bit more money there would give us the flexibility to enter into like a natural gas contract in the future. And it's possible that the state legislature will change a few things and add teacher recruitment or retention as appropriate uses of that fund. So when you ask me what was different, I guess having a debt service that tiered down and was one of the big differences this year. We got done with our budget, and then the state did do a few things with property taxes, which then required us to adjust the process and go back in. Not huge adjustments, but just little tweaks with the adjustments. And so, Kathy's been doing this for a long time. And then I guess what I was alluding to at the beginning, when I first started it, it was a huge Excel document that you would work on, and you would go to websites and you would look up and you would key in, and there was human error. We've got a new finance director, Jonathan Parker, and he's got an interactive web-based solution. So from the perspective of doing a budget and levy from a school business official and superintendent, it's a lot more automated. Instead of going to a website and grabbing the number, the website does that for you. So Jonathan Parker came in, and it's been awesome with regards to that. It makes it a lot easier.
And I know you're limited to what you can spend in certain levies, and perhaps maybe that'll get tweaked a little bit here in the next couple of weeks. But would you like to have more freedom with levies, or is this process an okay one in your mind?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, if we could have a little bit more flexibility with our levies, that would be helpful for sure. Some of them I wouldn't want. You can only put so much into debt service because that's your mortgage payment. You don't want to. Obviously, you have to put in a minimum amount. There are opportunities to pre-levy for that. Maybe for instructional support, if we could put more into that, then we'd have a little bit more general fund. We'd have to tax at a higher rate, but that would probably be a way that you could give local districts the opportunity to fund their schools at a little bit different rate. So I would say, as Superintendent Decorah, that would probably benefit us. I think in general, our community supports education well, and I think you could make a case for that. So if you could change that tomorrow, let me know. But yeah, there'd be some opportunities that if we had a little bit more authority over our taxing base, that would benefit Decorah. But I also know that the funding formula in Iowa is set up so that schools, for the most part, whether you're in Decorah, Iowa, or Waterloo, Iowa, or Charter Oak, you're funded at the same level, student-wise.
When it comes to that funding formula at the state level, I believe that formula is older than I am, and I'm not that young anymore. Would you like to see that formula looked at to maybe catch up to 2023, or is it one of those cases of it isn't broke, so let's not fix it?
Well, it might be a case where it's not. It might be a little broke, but the solution might be worse than what we have now. We've got a pretty complex funding formula. As I recall, was coming about. I think the most recent version was being redone in the 80s. But the idea is that every student brings the same amount of dollars to the schoolhouse door, was kind of the idea. And in some places where you're property rich, you get less state funding, and other places it makes up for that. So it probably helps a state like Iowa, where we do have regions that aren't densely populated, and we want to have schools in those regions because we know that for the welfare of the state, that it's good that everybody has a quality public education. So does it work exactly the way I want it to work? No. Do I have a better solution? No. So you just have to be careful. Sometimes the fix is worse than the problem.
And related to the budget in a little bit of a way, you did prove the agreement with the DEA at your last meeting on the issuance of contracts for next year. Obviously, that's something that you need to get done every year, and you got it done. Was there any bumps in the road on that process?
No, that was a really nice process. I working with the DEA, that can be that's just a tough thing, because you've got the people we count on the most are our teachers. We certainly want to compensate them and treat them with respect, and we also have to understand that we've got limited resources, so we can't just give them everything. So that's just kind of that's a careful process. And it's kind of like arbitration in baseball. They talk about that process where you go into baseball arbitration and the ownership says what a crummy year you had. And then the player hears what the ownership thinks about him while they're just doing that to maybe drive salaries down. I would say that might have been in the old model of negotiations where it was kind of a, hey, we're not going to spend money on teachers and teachers saying you have to spend more money on us. It's really more of a collaborative process right now. And that's driven a lot by districts. And there's more of an understanding from district administration, but also from teacher association that we're all on the same team and we're all working. They know that we want to pay them more money and we want to be competitive. So that really helps immensely. But I've noticed a shift in my superintendent meetings where it might have been almost a competition to have lower settlements, to be more fiscally responsible. To I'm going to meetings and people are, saying, hey, we settled at 4%, and people kind of understanding that that's how it is in education right now. This is kind of a manifestation of the teacher shortage and knowing that we have to pay people more and have to get more competitive with salaries. But with the process here, it was a very nice process. Appreciated working with the DEA. We really talked and understood, and honestly, their initial offer was a reasonable initial offer. Our board really extended themselves. My first experience was teachers would come in at 9 to 10%, and the board would offer 0%, and you'd end up at 3%. And that's how it was in Cedar Rapids and Central City and my start. Teachers came in at about 4.9, district came in at 4.1. And so when we got down to the negotiations, it didn't take very long, and we settled at the 4.37. So good process.
Of course, a little over a month from now, summer will start as you'll leave the classroom on June 2nd. From a project perspective, how busy is the district going to be this summer?
Well, we've got a few things going on before summer starts. We previously approved the baseball lighting project, and so that should be going in earnest. We've got a lot of smaller projects kind of here and there in the district. I think the biggest thing that we're working on getting bids for and getting completed is the outdoor play area that is right across the street from me currently at Carey Lee. There's like a little grass area, and it's between Carey Lee and the middle school. It gets used extensively by students and gets very muddy, and grass doesn't grow. So the board had approved with use of a combination of ESSER and PEPAL funds that we're going to do an outdoor play area that is artificial. And so we're working on getting that done. That's probably one of the bigger projects that we'll have going on that people will notice. And that will be a nice little addition for the whole community, and being able to have a space that you can go on, whether it's raining or not, will be super nice for both of those schools.
I know most people know what PEPAL funds are. What are ESSER funds?
Oh, ESSER, that's the last little bit of the COVID relief funds from the state or from the federal government. And so district started this year with about $630,000, and we've used a little bit on some positions, but you don't want to put too many positions in that, because then when they go away, you don't have you don't have the funding for those positions. So we've tried to do some projects. We've done some air exchange projects that was nice to be able to fund through that. And so we had outdoor play area being important, because if you can't go outside, then you're cooped inside all day. So we did get prior approval for our outdoor play space from the state. And so that's how that project kind of came down.
I know. Go ahead.
Yeah, ESSER just would stand for like the Secondary Recovery Act. I'm education. I shouldn't even have tried to figure out what the acronym is. So let's skip it and go on.
All right. Well, you explained what it is without the
Yeah.
acronym, and we'll let you slide on that end of things. We'll give you a B+ for
Okay.
answering
Okay.
that question. I know over the last decade or so, there's been incentives for school district to share certain positions, and it looks like you're going to be sharing a social worker with the Howard Winneshiek School District. Is that correct?
Howard Wynn has to approve that with their board, but that's our plan. So understanding how operational sharing works, it's a pretty interesting incentive from the state where one district has a position, whether they hire new or they have an existing person, and they share up to 20%. So 1 day a week with another district. And if they're one of the specific positions, so of course so like examples might be superintendent is a sharing position, HR, school business official, buildings and grounds, counselor, social worker, I'm missing a couple, transportation. These are all positions that can be shared across district. We will then do something called, every year we do a staff report. It's called fall bid staff for the state. And you just indicate in there, hey, this is a shared position. It qualifies for operational sharing. And when we get our budget in, I guess, February of 24, there'll be a little line that will add in extra students that didn't attend here, but the state gives us credit for having more students because we shared. Right now, the state will increase our enrollment by 2 students for sharing a social worker. There's currently a bill that would take that back up to 3 students. And so the whole point on sharing is then the state, there's an incentive where the state gives you extra money. So they're going to at least give us $15,000 to share a school social worker, on top of the fact that we think our cost might be about, for 3 days a week of a social worker, about $32,000. And then if the state gives us $15,000, all of a sudden we've cut down our costs and made it real affordable to have 3 days a week a social worker. Same thing for Howard Wynn. They can get a social worker for about $21,000. If the state funds it at 2 students, $15,000, they've got 2 days a week for, roughly $6,000. So it's a nice incentive from the state, and gets used a lot more with smaller districts. But I did a little analysis of districts our size with some of the data from Iowa Association of School Boards, and roughly the 10 districts larger than Decorah and the 10 districts smaller, they shared about 6 positions. And so 6 times 7,500, that would generate roughly $45,000 for that district.
And that's what I got on my math too. So
okay. Well, I just was doing that mental, but sure.
I had a piece of paper in front of me, so I was cheating, but
there you go.
We move on. Anything new to report on the elementary school facility discussion?
No, but I appreciate you asking, because we haven't had, we continue in talks. Our big things are finding locations, permanent locations for tennis and permanent locations for softball. And once those happen, then we would work in earnest to get drawings of where the building will actually would be built. If we don't have permanent locations for that, we don't obviously want to do a drawing on land that is owned by the city. Those negotiations talks are happening with Travis from the city and other places. I don't want to get too specific, because among other things, if I say, yeah, we're looking at buying this land or that land, or we've got negotiations, that might make our negotiation stance difficult. So we do keep some of that stuff secret until we're ready to make an offer on property. But we're continuing, and we're not moving at the best pace, but that doesn't mean that we're not working to get some solutions.
Anything else you want to pass on to district patrons, as long as you got the forum?
Boy, other than, busy time of year with activities, and we start to recognize retirees. Next week, we'll have a in-house dinner for retirees and folks that have met a milestone, which is nice too. You do the 5-year increments, and then after that, we're going to recognize our seniors and our scholarship nights, and pretty soon it'll be graduation, and it'll be ready for summer. So just kind of a busy time, but lots of opportunities between lots of activities this spring still to get to. We just had the 6th grade play. Wizard of Oz was one of the highlights a couple of weeks ago. But we've got our concerts. I want to say the orchestra's coming up in a week or two. as well as it's full bore ahead right now for, I guess, soccer, tennis, golf, and track.
All right, Tim, we appreciate you taking some time to tell us what's going on in the district like you do each and every month. Thanks for the time as always, and we'll look forward to having a conversation with me. And if there's any snow days in May, don't blame them on me.
Fair enough. Sounds
All right.
good. All righty.
Tim Cronin from the Decorah Community School District. I thank you to our guest on the program this morning, Kendra Cooper, Luther College softball pitcher, Kee High graduate, going to be helping coach the Kee High softball team again this summer, and just quality young person, and she hopes to get into coaching, and young people will benefit with people like Kendra Cooper in coaching, and enjoy the conversation with her. I want to thank Gary Boden, the city manager of Decorah, and Tim Cronin, the superintendent, or Gary Boden, the city manager of Waukon, I should say, and Decorah school superintendent, Tim Cronin. Don't forget, we put these shows on YouTube each and every week. We realize you can't always be near a streaming device or a radio near around 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning, but we get to talk to interesting people. That's the fun of our job, and we want to bring these conversations to you on your schedule. If you're out on YouTube, you can just search 518 Our Town Program, or you can get the video links at all of our radio station websites, KeeHighRadio.com, RiverRadioFM.com, KVIKRadio.com, and HawkRock.com. You can also get the links on all of those radio stations' Facebook pages. It's another way we do our best to serve the community here at LA Communications. Thanks to our sponsor, Decorah Bank and Trust. Thanks to our three guests. And most importantly, we thank you. That's right, you, for tuning in, for logging on, or for watching Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River.